The thing that struck me when the boom was really rolling was the action. I mean, it was so busy. Like getting onto Main Street, and you have driven down Pinedale and you'll probably film the Main Street. I mean, it's like you pull out and turn on, you know, you don't even think about it. I mean, you could not get on the street. It was so busy, trucks and cars and people. And if you'd go to the coffee shop where we had coffee this morning, it would be completely full. I mean, the noise, the cacophony, things happening.
Right at the present time, I'm just going to use ballpark figures, 70 to 75% of our revenue to run the county comes from energy development.
Everybody had a job, everybody was making good money, everybody was spending money. You had to be thinking all the time about how are we going to deal with this, what are we going to do there, what are the issues, how are we going to manage those.
New business did come to Rifle because of it. I think we built 3 hotels that were not here prior, obviously.
You know, there's a lot of brand new John Deere tractors out there. There's a lot of new equipment, and there's new this and new that you would never ever see on these ranches that it wasn't for the oil and gas industry.
All of the Great Plains communities have been losing population. In the last census, we had the highest loss of population of any county in Montana, and the boom has really turned that around.
Just the number, the sheer number of building permit applications that we were processing, the subdivision proposals. Sublette County, the default zoning for the county is agricultural zoning. So we were doing half a dozen zone changes a month.
When the natural gas development began, it was amazing. All of a sudden, there were no houses to buy. If there were houses to buy, the price tags on them were outrageous compared to what they ever had been in our memory. And so it was really interesting to watch all of the businesses in the community of Rifle booming because of the natural gas development.
These days, the arrival of an economic boom driven by energy development is accompanied with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. On one hand, the community will be abuzz with activity. The streets will be busy and businesses will be thriving. New jobs and faces will abound, and the economy will be on the upswing. The flip side is that changes occur so quickly that there's little time to prepare. Most communities don't have adequate housing, infrastructure, or services to deal with the dramatic population growth. And looming in the background is the inevitable bust that will occur, which makes planning all the more difficult.
We were inundated by developers and contractors, and it was just totally overwhelming. I mean, all of our commissioners are, they're elected officials, but they all have a full-time job elsewhere. So they can't put all of their time and effort into city business.
At the end of the day, it's going to be the city responsible for maintaining the roads and all the improvements and the fire and police.
We weren't able to take full advantage of the influx of people and the influx of revenue because we weren't really prepared for that.
I just think that we as a community, when we come out on the back side of it, I want us better off.
When an energy boom occurs, most communities are ill-prepared to meet the accompanying growth and demographic changes. Each boom sees a familiar list of concerns: scarce or unaffordable housing, residential and commercial development that is haphazard and unplanned, inadequate infrastructure for drinking water and wastewater treatment, overcrowded schools, and an increase in crime. Despite these challenges, there's much communities can do to prepare, particularly through planning.
So I would say to the person in the elevator, the energy industry can bring a lot of really great economic benefits to your community, but you need to funnel the direction that this is going to go. You need to have a hand in how this all plays out.
5 years ago, they'd walk in and the city was like, yep, we'll take it. Or the county's, yep, we'll do it. Well, now...
Plan, plan, plan. That would be my biggest pearl of wisdom. Be prepared to plan. Have a plan in mind that what you want your city to be, and stick to your plan.
What area fits? You know, does this parcel of land fit for the future growth of Williston, and vice versa?
If you want your city to be this nice little small community, plan for it to stay this nice small community. If you want explosive growth and you really want to get bigger and bigger, plan to get bigger. Have it already in your head or on paper where you want this growth to be.
We have done, from the traffic studies, we've done housing studies. As a matter of fact, we have engaged North Dakota State University to do a housing study every year for us to see where we're at. We have a future land use map. We have a future growth map. We spent a lot of money on a lot of studies to help us grow responsibly compared to back in the 70s and early 80s. Because back in those days, it was, you come here, build it, call it good. There weren't a lot of parameters. It was just put up the building and put up the house and away you go. Here we have a little bit more structure, and that was something we learned from the last boom.
When you're making a decision, you have to have some basis for that decision, and it's, you're protecting everyone's property rights, and I think even developers would agree. If they have a known set of standards that they have to meet and comply with, they even support that, because they know if I do X, Y, and Z and address these concerns, then I'm in all likelihood going to get approval.
In Sublette County, we finally hired a person to come in and do all of that data, do all of the studies. How much has our population grown? How much have some of our service organizations had to increase their staff to handle the problems that were coming in with the influx of population? He did all kinds of studies for us. How many people were working on each rig and how many new people did we have in the county? It was invaluable information, and I would urge any county who is facing this, yes, it's an added expense to your county payroll, but it will pay off for you in the long run.
What happened is you had this young man putting together the socioeconomic data, but you didn't have anyone to carry out what he came up with, find answers, find solutions, work with people to make that happen. We talked about it, but we never did really do anything about it. So in 2006, we developed a plan, and it was through a number of conversations over the year probably, where we said, how can we make this happen? Went to the companies and said, will you provide some income to have someone come on board to work with socioeconomic issues? And all 5 of the major companies said, yes, we will do that. Then we went to the governments, both the city governments and the county government, and they put in money as well. This young man came in and started quantifying socioeconomic issues relative to what was going on with the boom. Unfortunately, it was late. Had we done this in the mid-90s and started being prepared, I think the relationship between the companies could have been established much earlier, and we could have worked together to solve socioeconomic issues before they became problematic.
As you've heard, comprehensive planning, socioeconomic studies, and even regulations can be essential for a community to understand and guide growth associated with an energy-related boom. While all of this can be very intimidating, you don't have to go it alone. There are a lot of resources out there that can help you, including state technical assistance agencies, non-governmental organizations, and the private sector consulting firms. they can all lend a hand.
Sunday morning, May 2nd, 1982. I think I had, let's see, I can tell you exactly, I had 3 little kids then. Mom and I were getting the kids ready. We're about going out the door for church Sunday morning. Phone rings. And you know how that phone rings sometimes and you just get that eerie feeling. Oh, I shouldn't answer that. And I looked at her and she said, go ahead. I was the mayor pro tem at the time of Rifle. She says, go ahead. We had no idea who I was, so I pick it up. And this guy identifies himself as a reporter. I remember his name because I remembered his name at the time, I don't now, but because he was a reporter for either the Rocky Mountain News or the Denver Post. And he says, is this Mike Sampson? I said, yes, sir. He says, the Mayor Pro Tem, City of Rifle? I said, yes. So that's, you know what's coming next, right? And he goes, could I get a comment from you on Exxon's pullout this morning? Dead silence. What do you say to that? Because number one, I didn't have a clue. And finally I said, sir, I got to admit to you, I don't know what you're talking about. And then there was dead silence on his end. And then he finally said, oh, you don't know. The economy was good. The city of Rifle, we were doing good. Money was coming in, businesses flourishing and everything. And you take 2,000 jobs of good paying and you yank them out. The ripple effect is unreal, you know, because now I'm not going to go down to your restaurant twice a week. And I'm not going to buy those new boots that I was going to buy. Why? Because I don't have any money. I just lost my job. And I'm worried sick I won't be able to replace that job here. I'm going to lose my home, my down payment. Those are ugly stories. Those are real ugly stories. And there were a lot of them.
From a city perspective, I think the most important thing that we learned was we as a city cannot be putting all the improvements in at our expense and taxpayers' expense to facilitate this growth.
The biggest thing I think that we're doing to prepare for this boom is we're having any developers that come in, we're having them pay for their infrastructure. We're trying not to leave the citizens of Ray or Williston or Williams County even, you know, with having all of this debt.
So now what we do is we actually have the developer sign a developer's agreement, and it's a legal binding contract, and it puts them on the hook for all the improvements because they have to put a cash bond or an irrevocable letter of credit from their lending institution up front before they get any approvals. So that mentality is we can't be responsible. We need to put the developer on the hook and have them be responsible for the improvements. What happened is, back in the 80s, we didn't do that as a city. And it's at no fault of the city, we didn't know. But when this thing went bust back in 81 and 82, the city incurred $22.8 million of debt. And it took us up until January 1st of 2001 to retire that particular portion of the debt. Well, with interest and whatnot, it was closer to 28 million.
And the hard part is, if you were to talk to a lot of people in Rifle, they'd say, oh, things are just fine. Everything's just fine. But if you were to bring them to the reality of walking through downtown Rifle and the fact that we have probably 10 empty storefronts right now, I don't know that that argument can really be made that everything is fine.
We as elected officials, we that are in charge of our communities and our counties and our governments and so on, we have to be prepared for whatever. We can't control the future. We don't have a lock hold on anything.
We kind of live for the next boom, and wish we had done better when the bust comes, and it's a cycle, and it is, like I said, a Wyoming way of life.
Boom and bust is the reality of energy development. Making the best of both of them requires communication and cooperation.
It's always the question of, will it really ever happen? And that's some of the stuff we run into. Well, we feel like a lot of it really will happen, and we're okay with that happening, but we want the community to be involved in how that happens and how it proceeds and shapes their future in a way that they think is better.
And I think you have to get all sides in the same room and discuss. I mean, you have pro-development issues, you have environmental issues, you have community issues, and I think we were never able to really coalesce all of those people to come together and talk on a level that was as constructive as it could have been.
If we would have communicated better with the gas companies that were coming to the area and had a better idea of the number of people that were going to be here on a permanent basis, that would have been huge in determining how much we actually needed. And in addition to that, we could have done a lot better job cooperating with the towns. Better cooperation would have been a big key, a big factor in helping alleviate some of the mistakes we made with respect to housing and lots.
One of the greatest mistakes I think we made was we had a socioeconomic analyst, the top one from Washington, D.C., come out and visit with us. And everybody was pretty much in the room. And that's the only time I can remember that we had the environmental community, city government, not much representation with local business, but county government. And that socioeconomic analyst put together an idea about how all of us could work together, and no one ever really took it and went with it. And I thought that was really unfortunate, because the BLM really did come to the table on that one and said, we are willing to come up with a way to make this happen, and we can meet annually and we can give, you know, information, and it never did really happen. And I think it's because people retreated back into their own corners and had their own agendas and were unwilling to say, this could be a good idea, we could make this happen.
Being able to talk with other people in other communities has been the best thing for us, to have other people's experiences, you know, and like from history before, you talk to some of the people that were here during those other two booms, and they'll say, make sure you don't do this or don't do that. That, you know, maybe I didn't remember because I wasn't here at that time, or it wasn't discussed, but other cities have gone through it, maybe not in North Dakota, but in Wyoming or in Colorado.
It's not so much whether we agree with energy development or we disagree with it. It's more about making connections within our community, building the strength of being able to have the tough conversations.
But everybody has the opportunity to speak. And we as Americans, that's the thing we've lived and died by, is our freedom of speech, our ability to be who we are, say what we think, and live the way we want to live.